So, so what we're talking about today are this is just a review that there are, remember, we're starting today with talking about flexibility, but which is getting stuck, not stopping when told to. But then in the next couple of sessions, we'll talk about planning, which is don't get things done on time, can't finish projects. And the last one will be on organization, getting lost in details, missing the main point. And then some other things that, if you remember, we talked about last time, which I just wanted to mention again, which is this notion of can't and won't, where the idea, if you remember this, was that some things are really difficult for kids to do who have executive functioning difficulties, and it looks like it may be that they just don't that they won't do it, but they can't. How have you been thinking about that?
We saw that with when my son was in first grade with his special ed teacher. She was a new teacher, and she's not at school anymore, by the way. And she thought he would not do certain things, and he couldn't do certain things. And so I've seen it, in action.
And she left? Did she leave? Or did she?
Well, she was put in a different position for the following year where she was not a primary special ed teacher. We got a new principal at that point with a special ed background. And so she received, I think, a lot of training and mentoring during that year. And then after that year, she was no longer there. So I don't know where she went.
That's interesting.
I think she probably just went to another school, and I'm not sure if she's still doing special ed, but she's no longer at our school.
So I was just wondering whether there were, is it difficult to make that distinction for you guys? The distinction between something that they can't do and they won't do?
Yeah, it is for me. That's constantly something that, I think I really do have to agree with that, because I think that, it's a learn. Some things can be learned, so we can do it. But up front, it's kind of hard to accept.
And do you have a way of kind of figuring that out at all? Just, if you think, let's say I'm looking at the first one there, it's sort of the stubbornness one. I know for me, that's sort of a hard one for me to think. I mean, I think that there's often this thing where they really my kid doesn't really want to do something. And I think he pretty much knows that he could do something else. But so you don't want to. For me, at least, I never feel like I want to just say, "Okay, you can't do it. You don't have to do it." I was just wondering if you guys had sort of had an idea about how you would handle situations like that.
I usually do just that.
Do you?
When he starts to, about homework, I can't do this, I don't know how to do it, and I say, okay, you don't have to do it. And, let's just put it aside, and I'll write a note. And a couple times I've even gone into the school in the morning and said, he had a lot of trouble with this, he was very upset, we didn't finish it, and the teachers were all like, okay, fine, they don't care, but he worries that he's going to get in trouble.
Right.
I think if it takes a long time to get everything out, still not getting done, I think that's the time that we intervene. For example, there was a writing assignment that he had to complete before spring break. And there wasn't enough time for all of the kids in the class, so they were supposed to complete it by spring break. Still didn't do it. And I had discussed it with him prior to going on break, and he had a lot of great ideas, but nothing was being put down. And so finally we just kind of, it was my husband actually who said, okay, because he was able to verbalize, and then my husband kind of let him talk, and he just typed out what he talked, and then he was able to write out the story. So it was just like a different, instead of him writing it down, how can we approach this so it still gets done without him being so stuck to have to write it down.
Right. So that's like a plan A, plan B thing almost. Yeah. And so then it was, it flowed, he could, if he said it, then you talked it out, and then it was,
It
yeah.
was a great story. It was just getting past that one thing.
Right.
My son has dyslexia too, and one of the things we struggled with this last year is that how can he read the grade level material if he has trouble reading grade level material? So he needs the knowledge, but reading the material that's in the language for the fifth graders is really challenging, and so we are reading it to him, and he can, because he would say, "I can't read this. I can't read it," and mostly he couldn't read some of the words. They were just too much for him. And so we had to just, we talked with the teaching team about it, and the best solution at this point is we read it and he reads it along with us silently. So he's just reading it as we read it out loud. But he would say, I can't read this. And, literally, it was beyond him. And he could read some of it, but then the other part would just be so painful. It was just really discouraging for him, I think. So we just had to find a kind of a compromise, a way to help support him through it.
And was that's okay
He
with him?
loved that.
He loves that, yeah?
Because that made it a lot easier, that he didn't even have to struggle with any of the words. I mean, he could just read along.
But that's a specific accommodation that kids should be getting.
Yeah, literally they should be like videotaping, taping the material and sending it home. But that's the perfect world, and they put the materials together from such different places that this is kind of like the real world adaptation of it.
There are programs that if you print, it'll read it to you, and that's something that.
Oh, like on the computer unit, yeah.
Yeah, these are like articles,
Yeah, but it gets
photocopied
scanned
articles.
in. It gets scanned in, and the computer program will read it back.
So yeah, they're programs that do exactly what we're doing. We're just,
But-
at this point doing it.
But maybe that's also a nice, in some
Well,
ways
it
you
means
were
he gets
building-
to sit down with
He
us.
does,
we're sitting
right,
on the
yeah.
couch. It's mom-son time. Yeah, we're doing schoolwork, but it's maybe a little more fun, I guess, that way for him. But yeah, so yeah, there are accommodations for that.
Yeah. Have you, I just wondered whether you'd felt like this idea about can't and won't is something that you're comfortable with.
Sometimes it's fuzzy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
always know.
Because it comes with that other question of preferred versus not preferred. Because when it's a preferred activity, they can.
Right. Yeah.
I usually err on the side of he can't. And then, of course, my daughter gets really upset with me because, you would have made me do that. Well, we're just not going to push this here because I can't, I can't or won't deal with the hysteria that follows. And then, trying to calm him down just takes too long, and it's just easier to assume he can't do it.
So this is an interesting thing also. I think the idea that, so there's some things that are easier because they're something they like to do. So one of the, you could think, in fact, that that's kind of part of the executive functioning thing, right? That to be able to do things that aren't all that interesting, to generate the energy and the desire to do that is part of what it is, right? You have to switch to things that are, may not be what you like to do, but are important to do at that time, and that may be the can't piece in some ways.
Like reading, for example, they'll be required to read at least for half an hour every day. But if it's a book that he likes, he could actually read for hours straight without stopping. But if it's a book that they don't like, they can't even, they're looking at the clock.
Yeah.
30 minutes yet?
Yeah.
So it's knowing that. So I think it requires a lot it requires spending a lot with the child, because that's only when you can actually
Right.
decipher between these two. I mean, there are things that I think he can at this point. For example, the writing portion of the homework, where they are asked to read the book, and there are 5 different ways that you could actually fill out this homework. You can actually write predictions, retell. That's something that's very difficult for him, even for things that he prefers, even for books that he likes. It's very hard for him to express at this point. Because you could just imagine how much that is taxing on your
Yeah.
executive function when you try to organize now your thoughts and write it out.
Yeah. And I think that thinking about kids with dyslexia, with reading difficulties, other kinds, I mean, that is, although it's, it's a separate issue in some ways from executive function, they certainly, it sort of interplays, because of, that is difficult for them to do. And so you have to really, because it's so difficult, they have to exert much more effort than another kid might be and they have to sort of pull in all those resources, which is hard to do. Yeah.
Even for somebody normal, it's difficult to write.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing, because they've been doing this writing thing for a couple of months now, is I've been providing him a lot of scaffolding. So like making him tell you what it is, and I do the writing so that he doesn't have to do this effort, or giving him phrases like that will prompt him to actually form that sentence.
Right. Yeah, and so I think you're pulling in, praise. We've talked praise, another thing. We're talking about the importance of that. But I think that, so going back to my original question, is how do you know the difference between, and maybe you don't really, if you sort of take the initial thing that it's difficult, and then I think, and then try to figure out ways to make it less difficult in some ways. That may be because I think the other way, if you're really trying to say something like, I know you can do this, you're just not. That may put a damper on what they would do.
In some regard, it doesn't really matter if they can't or not. If it still needs to get done, I think it's been just
How long have you been playing?
if it still needs to get done, you have to find a creative solution.
Yeah.
You still find a way to get it done. So like whether it's a life skill that he's going to have to kind of adapt and figure out how to do on his own regardless of everything here. So it's been nice to at least have some terminology to use, basic language that he understands to kind of help him adapt. And I think we have been sitting down with him more and trying to troubleshoot. It's been helpful, I think, most helpful for me to realize, I have trouble differentiating who can't and won't, still needs to get done. So I do spend more time with him, I think, to think things through and explain to him why it's important. And like, he's really excited about going to middle school, and all these kids who are going in 5th grade and in middle school, they use binders. And I go back to this binder because it's been really transformative for him. But he is really excited about it. In fact, it's intrinsically motivating for him to become more organized because he feels like he's advancing in middle school. But that just appeals to him. So.
But you bring up a really good point, which I think in some ways, I think the child themselves needs to sort of start thinking about what's, maybe not can't and won't, but what's difficult, and recognizing it, and then knowing that that's not, it's not something that you're a bad person because you can't do that, but that there may be ways to get around it, or do things a little differently, like you're sort of like getting it read to you or things like that. And that's going to be important for the rest of as somebody for the rest of their lives, really, knowing that what they may not be, the best at, and knowing that you need to find some ways to get around it. And I think as you get older, and where the child starts to take over more of those responsibilities, like college and things like that, they have to go and they have to, say to the teacher that I need more time, or things like that, which, I think, so I think that's the good thing about thinking about can't and won't. You may not want to use those words, but to say that there's some things that may be difficult, and now we're figuring out other ways to do them, and to have that as almost a positive thing, that's what they're.
But also to give, like, I think it's really helpful to give him almost permission to think outside of what he's been taught, because, you're shown one way to do it, and then that's the only way they think it can be done. To say, well, why don't you try something different? It opens up a whole new.
Yeah. That there is the possibility. There are other things that you can do, and I think that's great. So the other things we talked about last time, we're just keeping it positive, and you were mentioning that before, building on the strengths. Don't say don't too much. Pick your battles. That's what you were. That's your point, really, about. Sometimes it really is not. It's not worth it to do that.
Well, my kid's only in third grade, so I have less. I have a seventh grader and a third grader, so I know what it's like, what the classroom stuff was like, and it's a lot harder in fifth grade than third grade.
Yeah. How do you mean? Why is it harder?
Well, because the material is more complicated.
Oh, I see.
There's
Right.
more of it.
Yes. Right.
They have to be able to pace themselves, and all those things become even more important in middle school, where you have to know where you're going next, make sure you have what you need.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's kind of what I was trying to say in a roundabout way. That as they get older and the demands become more, to be able to again, you can work and get better at things, but you still have to keep in mind that there may be things that challenge you, and that it becomes more challenging. You're right, as you get older. So, and the overload, preventing overload, waiting out the storm. Sometimes, does that happen?
He does this.
Oh yeah.
And once I see that,
That's too interesting.
and you could see it in his eyes when he's really tired. So he just kept back.
Yeah.
And when actually last week, this is also one development with him, is that he seems to be very focused on goals.
On the what?
On goals.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, one of the goals was to score 4s in this project across the board.
Really?
And there are 7 criteria.
In the groups, you mean?
It's a social studies project. In school, in class.
Oh, in school.
So
Okay.
he had a social studies project, and he was being graded on 7 criteria. Each one gets scale 1 to 4, and he got 4 in 6 out of 7. The 7th criteria where he didn't get a 4 was focus.
Oh yeah.
And he was arguing with the teacher that he was so focused that day. But this evaluation went through like 5 full days. So he was very focused on the 5th, 4th, but not during the first 3. That's why the teacher was explaining to her, that's why you're getting a 4. And he was,
Was he upset about it?
He was very upset.
Yeah.
And I volunteer in the school, so this happened when I was in the school, so the teacher called me. And that's when for example, when you see him already there on the storm, there's nothing you could do. And there's nothing you could do to explain to him. All you could do at that point is just to calm him down.
Yeah.
And to bring the emotions down. But it's just, and this is new, very new for him to be very, very upset with not being able to get a perfect score.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you had thought of the notion of big deal, little deal there.
This was before the big deal.
I'm sorry, but now, if you thought about how you might have,
But we were talking about big deal, little deal already, because I was aware of that. And I knew that was a big deal to him. It's a big deal. It's okay to actually have that. That's why I even talked with the teacher that on one hand, I'm actually quite happy that he's setting high standards for himself. But on the other hand, I'm also happy that he didn't get it this time, because a lot of times that's a real good opportunity to learn, from failure and being able to face it and be strong. That's not something that should stop you.
Yeah.
So it was opening a lot of opportunities, but at that point, the first thing I realized this is always too much to discuss with him. You know, he's not gonna learn from this. This is only just one episode,
Right.
and we'll try to milk it as much as we can. But I really have to wait for him for the right emotional or right mood to actually discuss it in greater detail, which is what I've been doing after about 3 or 4 days. You know, because 2 days before that, you just mentioned it, and you could see the tears are coming from the eyes. And
Yeah.
you could see that he was still not ready for discussing it. My wife started discussing it with him, and that night he just went crying.
Really? Yeah.
I actually benefited from the news website, the board members. She said they were going through the big deal, and he was able to kind of provide examples of how some things that might seem like big deals or little deals, except for failing the test. So we had a discussion at home about that. You know, depends on what kind of test it is, but still, you can always retake a test. So I mean, while some things might be bigger deals than others,
Yeah.
the scope of things,
Yeah.
we can always do. So that was, I thought, a very positive thing that they're talking about things that
So he said that failing the test could be a little deal?
it is a big deal, and you can find an example.
Oh, it's a
of
big-
why it would be a little deal.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Yeah.
So we address that at home.
In middle school, if you fail a test, you get to retake it. So they really go out of their way in Fairfax County to make sure you do fine and that you have as positive an experience as you can.
Well, I thought it was interesting, I think that one of the points about the big deal, little deal, and you said this earlier, which is that it is very much dependent on the perception of the person and the time that's happening and all sorts of things. And but they did. I think we make this point that if somebody says it's a big deal, if the child says it's a big deal, then you should treat it as a big deal, even though you don't think it's such a big deal,
I
right?
was actually surprised when I saw the handout because that's what I did. I accepted it as a big deal.
Yeah.
I never told him that it was a small deal. What I did tell him is that, yes, we have big deals, but it also depends on how we respond to it.
How you what?
How we respond to it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, are you going to give up? No. If it's a real big deal, that means we will try again. And so I did not dismiss that. But to me, I thought that was a big deal. For him, it's a big deal for me too.
Yeah, yeah.
But we can't stop there, though, just because it's a big deal.
Right. But I think the other thing is that you want to sort of say, well, how could we make this big deal into
A little.
a little deal? And what would be the ways to do that? And so you're accepting that it's the big deal for them, but how could we make it a little? I was thinking about your example a little bit about, the doing the project. It seemed like sort of overwhelming, a big deal, but then once you figured out that you could, he could say it, type it out, then that became a little less of a big deal or something.
And it opened up dialogue, just again, to give them permission. It's like, look, if you're stuck with something, just ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. And I think that whole experience opens his eyes to other solutions.
This all reminds me when I was in law school, they get taught certain things, and one of the professors said, everything's fixable except for 2 things. If you kill somebody, you can't fix that, and you can't fix the deadline for filing an appeal. But other than that, everything you can fix. Some things are harder to fix, but they're still fixable. It just takes longer.
I think it also.
And I've always used that.
I think that's a great thing, actually. Yeah. So fixing it is taking it from a big deal to a little deal, really, isn't it? In some way, yeah.
It's just using different words.
Yeah,
The same
right.
concept.
What I did tell him, though, is that he's also reading this book, Dignate, which talks about
Oh yeah, I know that one.
a
Yeah.
middle grade kid. It's talking about the Gina who always get A+, and he gets D's. And what I did tell him about that is that there are things that are big deals, but they're usually not big deals 24 hours, all day long.
Yeah, I see. Uh-huh.
Sometimes you can actually forget about it. So it's not always a big deal all the time.
Right.
Because I think sometimes the big is just that part of that emotion that's coming out of them that makes it really big. And you know that is actually temporary. It's not something that's, I hope.
No, I think that's good. I think in some ways that's sort of talking about when could the big deal be less of a big deal? And I think that's important, because I think when they approach these things that seem like big deals, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to be a small deal.
That they'll never forget about it, or
right.
This is it.
And either you do something right then to make it less of a big deal, or maybe if you maybe it won't be tomorrow or something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's what I try to tell him, is that you have to imagine yourself 24 hours from now, the next day, would you still be crying over this? And we'll see tomorrow.
Yeah.
When tomorrow
My son does all.
ask him,
I have a 9-year-old, and when you were talking about the tears coming in the eyes, and it's the funniest times when that happens. Things that I never sort of, it didn't occur to me that this was something that was that upsetting. And this morning, I help with his baseball team, and there was the picture day today, and then there's a practice right after, and I said I'm not going to be able to do that today, but the tears were there about it, and my first idea was like, mom's going to take you there, and the coach is going to be there, but it was a big deal, and and I thought about this because I was thinking about what we were going to be talking about today, and I said, I know it's hard when and I know this is, and it was, but it was, my first tendency was to sort of say, what? There's all these other support people around, and he's having fun. He likes going to baseball and things like this. Okay, so we're talking already about flexible thinking and why it's important. And it sounds like some of the words that which we're going to go through, are getting through there from the program. I think one of the things that, and it sounds like a little bit in your case with when he was sort of saying you need to be flexible. I think that's great, but I also think it makes it a little bit fun, and it makes it enjoyable to sort of use them.
He does it to his little sister.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. How did tell me?
You have to be flexible.
She says that?
He said that to his teacher.
Oh, she says it to her. Oh, that's interesting.
So that's why you know that he's learning something.
Yeah.
Because he's applying it to his little sister. We hope he applies it to himself, but at least he's applying it to somebody else.
I was thinking, I'm sorry, I was really struck by your lawyer analogy here. I mean, I was just thinking, wouldn't it, it'd be great to use that with him.
Oh, I do.
Do you?
I don't say,
that
I
idea?
don't use those words, but I do say, I know this seems like a big deal right this minute, and it is a big deal right this minute. So let me comfort you. I mean, I don't say this, but
Yeah.
I'll hug him and I'll let him cry, and then afterwards I'll say, okay, do you want to think about ways we can fix this? And then that usually works in him coming up with, like the homework thing. Well, maybe you can come to school with me in the morning and tell Mrs. Johns what happened, and I'll say, okay, that's that's fixable. I can do that, and I do it, and it's all fine. But you have to be able to follow through on the solution.
Yes, right.
And that was his solution. That was great.
Yeah, because Mrs. Johns is going to be so upset, and she's going to be so angry at me, and how am I going to let her know? How can you tell her for me? And then that was when I said, well, do you want me to come to school this morning? He didn't get completely there, but he got almost all the way there. But yeah, he's a smart kid. He just, and I also, because he's in third grade, and at this point, I'm more interested in him feeling good at home and comfortable and, you know, he's just fine with reading. His problem is on the math side, although he's just at grade level for reading, but he's pretty much below for math. And, you know, I don't want it to be an uncomfortable and unhappy thing so that, you know, it's always going to be a struggle. I want it to still feel positive so it doesn't feel like a chore, but he's also only in third grade, so I have time before we have to think about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm also, with my daughter, I've always taken the tact of, you know, college is not an option. That, you know, you're going to college. If you don't want to go to graduate school, that's a different story. You know, that's optional. But college is like, you know, you're going to college.
So that's no choice.
No choice. And, you know, I'm starting to think, well, you know, there may be things where, you know, that may not be the best choice for him, but I have to get to the point where I can kind of peg.
We're working on that too. Mommy's trying to be flexible.
Yeah.
I mean, they really
Not the
copy
future.
from examples. You know, I noticed that from my son. You know, the more he sees flexibility in me, the more he becomes relaxed as well.
Have you been trying to do that more?
Yes. I mean,
Can you give an example of like
you know, when I used to give him a real hard time when it comes to forgetting things or leaving things in school. But now, you know, I don't even show any emotion. Or if he forgets his jacket, and we do need his jacket, I go with him and we'll find it in the school, that jacket. But there's no more tantrums on my part.
Right.
Like before, where, how could you not, you know, how could you forget it?
But do you talk that out with him? Do you say, you know, I could have, you know, I could have really, you know, made you go and get that, or I could have had, but I didn't. I understood that sometimes it's hard to remember things. Yeah. That's great. I mean, I think that the more and I was just the same thing, you know, with your example. I think the more you sort of show that, and gosh knows I'm inflexible at times, and you know, and being able to sort of
And also
talk about that.
And he has play dates frequently every Sunday, and I'm there as well. So whenever I spot something where I think he's trying to compromise with the other kid, I grab that opportunity and praise him, make it a big deal.
Yeah.
You are being so flexible and letting him do it this way and play, and because they choose what game to do, and when he gives the other person the chance to actually decide, I make sure
Great.
I catch that. I mean, it's a everyday task. No? I mean, there are days where he's completely inflexible, but I think over time it's getting less and less. I could see the difference, but that's, I think, partly because I'm giving him that example. He's actually seeing it as well from me, that I'm not, you know, punishing him because I'm inflexible.
And, you know, I think if there's one really important piece of this whole program, it is that this modeling thing is really, really important.
They have to see it in you.
Yeah.
I'm still very inflexible when it comes to time. So we have to come here 1:30. I have to make sure that we're off the door. You know, that's non-negotiable at this point.
Yeah.
But with other things now, I'm very, very flexible. His mommy is more.
So this is just I think this is an example of some of the things we've been talking about.
Was that in the book?
That one I don't think is in the book. I think this is the one we've. Here, you can we'll just watch it. It's I hope let's see, the things are working here. Let's see.
Can you come over and sit next to me? No.
Oh, I
I'd
don't
really
hear
like to
the
talk to you. Can you come sit next to me? No.
audio here. Let's see. Can I?
Would you mind if you stop
Really
talking?
like to talk to you.
Oh, it's only coming through here.
No.
Oh well, let me see if I can get it up.
Sophia, would you mind if you stop drawing and come sit next to me? No.
Why
really like to talk to you. Can you come sit next to me? No.
Can you draw later? No.
Why not? I'm busy drawing.
Because I'm busy drawing the girl.
Can you draw later? No.
Can you draw later?
Why
Sophia?
not?
No.
Because I'm busy drawing a girl.
This is really important that we talk. Can you please come sit next to me?
Can you draw later, Sophia? No. This is really important that we talk. Can you please come sit next to me? No.
So just as a, what would, knowing what we know a little bit about flexibility now and things, what would you think could help in that situation?
Well, I don't understand what the urgency is.
What's going on here?
Yeah, why does she want to interrupt her in the first place?
Maybe to go.
To go somewhere?
I think they're probably in a situation, so, but I'll make it up. So let's say that they have to, go and they need to leave that place. Maybe she's, I'm trying to remember. I mean, if you could take, let's say that she's in a therapy session. And the time is up, and the mom is trying to get her to leave. So,
5 in the morning.
Yeah,
2-minute warnings.
yeah, that's always.
So she should have done that before, right? That should have been set up. Yeah.
Yeah, because once a person starts being comfortable in what they're doing, I mean, it's kind of good to actually stop them from what they're doing. So when he's, for example, playing on something, and we know that game goes in some episodes, we make sure that if we have to go, we will tell him right at the beginning of the last episode that he could play that after this, we have to stop because we have to go.
Okay, and so, right, so I think that's the first step, given that warning. If you're thinking about sort of the words and concepts we've been talking about here with compromising and, plan A, plan B, flexibility, what could you use in terms of words
Come
here?
over and talk to me when you finish drawing the girl. Perhaps the other woman could have gotten up and gone over to her instead of asking her to come.
So that would have been a compromising thing where so I'll come over. So what would you say though to her to sort of get her to sort of be a part of that compromise?
So I need us to leave in the next 5 minutes. I understand you want to keep drawing. You can have another 1 minute to draw, and then you can draw in the car when we're on our way home. So we do need to go, but you can still keep drawing later on.
So you
I
can
don't
bring
know.
the paper with you.
Yeah. But I think, if we gotta go, we gotta go, so, okay.
Right.
We do need to go, so, that,
So maybe
That's
there's
part of
a
reality,
choice,
yeah.
no choice thing here as well.
so we do
I
need
mean,
to go, that's a no choice
maybe the
thing,
therapist
yeah.
has another person coming in, right? You can't stay there. So is that one where you would want to invoke the choice, no choice idea? Do you
Okay,
think?
so
I don't.
we don't have a choice in leaving, we do have to leave. We do have a choice in whether we keep on drawing when we go.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have put it in this,
Yeah.
so that's a good way to do it. My son would accept that, and he'd say, well, can I draw while I'm walking? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's another compromise, right? Yes, you could do that.
Sorry.
Okay. So, I think that the idea here is that if you do have flexible thinking, you can compromise not only about what we just talked about, but rules, and you talked about that, right? The compromising in some ways about what to do in play, learning and getting along at home. So, are these the things that resonate to you people, to you guys, that these are the kinds of situations that are difficult?
Yeah, that can be hard when he sticks his heels in. Like,
Changing
we
plans.
need to do this.
Uh-huh.
That's not what they want to do. You know.
Yeah, we just learn how to play Monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
And there are rules that we don't like.
Yeah, there are a lot.
And the way, I could explain it to him is I change seats. Right now, you think this rule is bad for you, but if we change roles, look at it, how it actually works. There is fairness. I think that's one part of being flexible, is to actually take the perspective of the other person. So I think in that game, I'm able to show it to him. It's difficult because you have to get him into that other case where he's the one who's on the losing end, and now he sees why that rule is important.
This is true. We had a struggle on our way in here about a rule that he doesn't agree with. We've broken several iPad screens because they like walking with their iPads and then they just drop it by mistake, and then so we got a cover. We got a case with a cover. We also got a little case you can put it in, so you can zip it up while you're going. And he still wants to argue about protecting it when we walk, and he understands why. So I'm going to have to come up with a better plan because he doesn't agree with the rule.
So he's not agreeing with them, and so you sort of compromise by getting the case, right? In some ways, you so they can still walk with it, but he has to have a case, or is that the case?
No, we have a case.
The case has to be closed.
We also have a neoprene, like a little mini briefcase thing that you can just put it in. But he doesn't want to be bothered with any of that. He just wants to walk with it. So, we have the breakage plans. I guess we can get it fixed. We've done it several times. But anyhow, I'm just going to have to find a better script for that because it's a continual rule he does not agree with, and it's a rule we want to enforce, and so I'm going to have to come up with a better script for that.
We have a rule in our house that after 8 p.m., no more screening.
No more what?
No more screen time. So it's very hard to impose that rule because they really don't like it. So what we did was to qualify that rule. No screen time after 8 p.m. on school days. And so they look forward to the weekends. But it works out nice. So the rule doesn't look so strict. We give them some allowance. And it makes a big difference. They actually comply with the rule though.
So I'm just trying to think, what's the concept here? The concept for what we've been talking about here is, I guess, it's flexible for one thing, but then it is a plan B. So plan A is I want to use, and plan B is you can do it on the weekends.
It gets you most of what you want. 5 days out of the week.
Yeah.
I think
So compromising well here, right?
They only got Friday and Saturday nights.
And I've heard some of the conversations we already had are about having to learn something new. I think that's a difficult one.
Yeah, that's always a challenge when they get so apprehensive because it's something new.
Yeah.
We're also running up against the negotiation thing.
Right.
My son, if he doesn't agree with the rule or the structure, he wants to negotiate everything. He wants to renegotiate the deals with the teachers. He wants to renegotiate the deals at home. And so, we're gonna have to do, and some things we can negotiate and some things we can't.
And it's just because he's not comfortable with the current plan?
I would say, or it's not preferred.
It's not preferred.
Doesn't like it, not preferred. Would prefer to do something completely different kind of thing. He has a behavior intervention plan at school, and the reward time, they really changed his reward time and his break time. And so for break time, he used to be able to play on the computer, or he used to be able to do all kinds of stuff. Now it's a neutral break where he doesn't play on the computer and he doesn't read books. It's just like a time when he can just kind of be quiet. He could walk around the room. He hates that.
Oh.
He's been trying to renegotiate the break. He's like, listen, this is not negotiable. It was agreed upon by 15 people in an IEP meeting. He can't change this. So, but he is coming around and realizing it's.
Do you think it is helpful for him to have that break?
Yes, I think he preferred the other kind of breaks, but I think this break is valuable too. Because it just lets him step away from whatever he's having a hard time with, and then come back to it when he's feeling more relaxed and less stressed out. So I think it is still valuable. It's not the preferred one, but
Right.
yes.
It's interesting, though, that, I guess the fact that he's actually, sort of being involved in the negotiation process that's a
He's a negotiator.
time,
Yeah.
so you can see those different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've been talking about all this vocabulary already, which
Choice,
is
no
the
choice, yeah.
be flexible, compromise, stuck and unstuck. Oh, how about the stuck and unstuck? Has anybody been using that one much?
I haven't been using that terminology.
Go to that.
They don't do it in school yet.
Let's get to that one. So, being stuck is when you feel you only have one choice of action. All these things are really parts of flexibility, right?
Yeah.
It's or doing something about being stuck, right? So if you're doing plan A, plan B, or if you're
Yeah.
compromising, it's getting out of being stuck
Yeah.
when you only have one choice of action. But I think the word itself is a good word. I think it's a good word to use when when there's this feeling like there's no other option. It sounds like you're really stuck at that point. So you haven't heard that one coming back yet?
No.
Maybe.
Well, the thing is, stuck is usually associated with not being able to do something.
No control.
Yeah, instead of having just one choice or
Right.
But feeling stuck, that makes sense. Yeah, we can use that. Maybe we need to start adding that in.
I think it's that notion that you don't feel like there are any options. So no choices. Whereas being flexible means kind of there's lots of possible choices that you could come up with.
I think that the flexible is a much nicer word because
Yeah.
it's positive. The stuck is negative, so.
That's interesting. Yeah. So yeah.
So that's why you hear them use the word flexible more often. Because flexible offers a solution. Stuck simply tells you of a problem.
So unstuck is not.
The stuck is in there.
Stuck is in there. Yeah, interesting. Can you think of other words? You're saying flexible is one word, but I'm just trying to think of that point when when they really can't. They feel like there's no other options.
I actually think it's a good word to describe where they are in the problem-solving process. It's like when Ryan couldn't get that assignment written down, he was truly stuck. And to acknowledge where he was at that time, and then, it's kind of almost comforting. It's like when someone notices you're sad, hey, you look sad, it's like, oh, someone noticed. Okay, so how are we going to get past the sadness or the stuckness? So I think it's kind of a validating.
This entire place will be evaporate,
Well, and then you sort of at the same time that you're talking about being stuck, you're showing how to get out of how to be unstuck from that. And doing the same thing over and over again is making you feel not so great. because it's not being successful. What are your thoughts?
I'm thinking my
Yeah.
son would appreciate the actions of teachers a little more if I explained them to him in the stuck and unstuck terminology more, because he has his feet get really hot when he gets really nervous, and so there's a rule at school: no sandals. And it's a rule, you know, he has sandals.
That's right.
And they made a special exception and allow him to wear sandals to school. And if I explain it to him in the stuck and unstuck, I think maybe he would appreciate that more, because he would realize that they had to change their thinking. Because I don't think I don't think I would have explained it to him that way. But that might help him get it better, I think, and see how they are having to change their thinking to help him get unstuck. So when he's stuck, they're stuck, kind of.
Yeah.
And so how they change their thinking, I think that would make him appreciate their actions more, because they really have had to bend over backwards to accommodate some of these things.
I was thinking, yeah, I think it's great. And I think your point is that first one, which is recognizing that you're stuck. You know, your face and your voice tell me that you're feeling stuck.
Yeah.
And I want to help and to get unstuck.
May I just ask, have you had that conversation with your son about how many accommodations
Yeah, it's
other
interesting.
people have had to?
I don't think we've really had that conversation, so I was looking at that thinking, you know, I need to explain some of this, that they are changing so that he won't be stuck, that they are unsticking their thinking and making changes. I think that would be valuable. I'm not going to do it for everything, but I think I will do it for some things, because I need him to understand that they are being flexible too, and he'll never understand that unless I mention it to him.
I think that's an important conversation to have, because we've started to have, you know, like, this stepping up his game,
Mhm.
like, because you're approaching the hospital, and you have to really show an effort to the best that you can. We've had that conversation, and we were able to use that to build off, to kind of help him problem solve a little bit more. I think it helped to have him open to more problem solving, but I think just again, gain that additional perspective of what are the people around me doing, and maybe I need to start trying to.
Yeah, because with the autism, I mean, he really is very me-focused still. And so, you know, getting a little more understanding and a little more empathy for the other people is always a goal. So, yeah, I think that's valuable.
That's a great idea.
What kind of accommodations does does your son get?
Start with just more time.
More time?
And breaks. Sometimes he just needs to go back and get overwhelmed.
Oh, and explaining the testing, that's a good point. So he doesn't get stuck, like when he's doing SOL testing or that kind of thing. Explaining that up front, I think. I mean, he knows he gets accommodations, but I don't think I've never verbalized that to him, like, oh, so you don't get stuck. I think, yeah, that could be really useful. Well, we'll
Right,
see.
and so having a little bit more time allows you to become unstuck, right?
Yeah.
From that, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
By the way, in your manual, I think there are, as we've been going through here, there are take-home sort of exercises, kind of, for you to look at. Like,
What chapter are we?
well, we're on just chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Yes, I think it's chapter 2, which is flexibility.
Okay.
And so we've gone through, as we've been covering all this, there are probably 10, I think there are 10 exercises that are in there, which are, so for instance, for the Unstuck, there's,
25.
let me find the right page. See yes.
Oh, chapter 2, 15, okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
starting at
that,
15.
yeah.
And if you look, say, for instance, at page 27, you'll see that there's a thing on stuck and unstuck. What you can do at home. Oh, and that's true. They have this notion of open mind, keeping an open mind on things, and meaning that there are other ways to do things. I think is another good term to use, and maybe maybe that's gets rid of Unstuck in some ways, I mean, maybe it's sort of keeping open or closed and open, I don't know. You can think about another way to use it if it's not comfortable. But I think it's, again, you were just doing this, identifying times when characters in books, people on TV, or people at school are stuck or unstuck, I think is a great way to sort of teach that point and use that. And again, and keeping an open mind, giving it a try. New kinds of food. I don't know if any of you folks have this issue, but
Yeah.
yeah, right. But trying new foods is sometimes really difficult.
We gave up on that.
Huh?
We just gave up on
You
that.
guys gave up.
There are battles that we just pick.
Yeah, I think that I hear you very well there.
We're counting on peer pressure to work on that.
Yeah.
Peer pressure helps a lot.
Well, I know my brother-in-law only eats steak and potatoes almost for every meal, so it's sometimes I think it's never going to happen, right?
But the peanut butter and jelly thing, I'm like, you're talking about peer pressure. My son refused to eat peanut butter and jelly. We offered it for years. No. And then peer pressure. Some kids at school were having the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he came home, peanut butter and jelly is really good. I'm like, excellent. Believe me. But
There's a teaching moment, right?
Yeah.
Remember how you wouldn't eat that, and you became more flexible, and yeah. And have you heard about Plan A, Plan B yet? You have, good. Okay. Again, that's keeping that open mind.
And Plan A and Plan B, I mean, if that resonates, I have to figure out which really resonates with him. Because if Stuck and Unstuck makes more sense to him, or Plan A, Plan B makes more sense to him, they're just two different versions of kind of the same thing.
It is.
And so it's whatever he really gets, right? So, I mean, I know it's all the verbiage of plan, but
And sometimes you can put them together,
okay.
so that,
Okay.
right, so it sounds like, it seems like you're stuck. I can tell from the way you're acting that you may be stuck here, so maybe let's think of a Plan B or something like that,
Okay.
too.
Okay. So associating it with the Unstuck. Okay.
Yeah, at our home, the stuck and unstuck, we basically just use that as to prompt him to walk away and take a break.
Oh,
That's how we do the stops and stuff. And we usually just see it in his games when he's not being able to advance to the next level.
Oh, the video games?
And you could see him really stuck. And he's doing the same thing, and of course you're doing the same thing. You won't be able to solve it. And he learns that he just has to walk away and look at it from a different angle later on after a break. And that's how he gets to the next level. So he's learning from that when you're stuck, walk away, think about it, relax, and return to it later.
Well, and I think the great thing is if you can sort of then use some of the other language with it, though, because that is a different. That's a compromise, sort of. That's a Plan B to do that instead of continuing to work on to play in that game and things like that. So I think that all these they're interchangeable but can be used together as well. There's this funny, I do, if you look on page 30, you'll see that home practices for Unstuck and Plan A, Plan B. And there's this funny thing, which is the Plan Z. I kind of like this one where
He said something like that.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh,
He went
yeah.
all the way through Z.
And you can actually it can become quite funny. You can sort of go through all these wild kinds of options. Eat dinner upside down. And eat everything in the fridge for dinner. That kind of thing. Again, the notion of making it fun is a good thing. And then we've talked a lot about the compromise, meaning again not giving up all you want, but giving up a little bit of you want, and especially when two people, and often it's you guys get something, and they get something as well. You go first, but then it'll be my turn. And maybe that's a good thing, compromising, I guess. I was thinking Monopoly a little bit here. That there's compromising that goes in Monopoly a lot.
Yeah, I got all the railroads.
You got all the railroads?
He didn't understand what that actually meant
Yeah.
until he fell on one of those. Then he realized he should not have sold me one of the railroads that he had. So he wanted it back.
I was wondering about, I was trying to think, so he got upset at this. He didn't like this at all. Did he not want to play anymore at that point? No.
He wanted me to return one of the railroad cards that I got from him.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll return it. But remember, I bought it for $2,000, which really looked like a good deal to me. So he wanted me to return, but he didn't want to return me the $2,000. And I said, no, that can't be. And then after a while, he thought about it. Okay, you can just get the railroad because he's just paying $250 now instead of paying $2,000. Now he saw, okay, you can get back your railroad, but you have to give me back the $2,000 I gave you.
So I'm waiting for the end of this. How did it end up?
Oh, he just learned that, and he really appreciated what the word monopoly means.
Oh, yeah.
You have to grab. It's not about the money that you see in front of you,
Yeah.
but it's about grabbing all those properties at one time. So he learned what the game.
But did he give you a 2,000 back?
Yeah.
Oh, he
No,
did?
he didn't give me back. He just let me keep the.
Oh, he let you keep them. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking that he could have negotiated them.
No, he just learned that okay, I'll get you back. I'll own this. The what do you call it? The two Boardwalk and Montreal Avenue. And if you land there and put hotels there, you're gonna owe me $2,000 in return.
So I think we've talked a lot about big deal, little deals already, and recognizing the difference, always feeling that it's a big deal, even if it may not seem like that to you. Don't tell them it's a deal.
The area was covered. Oh no, look at it.
And does this feel like a big deal or a little deal? I think that's a good. I mean, I think in some ways, if you talk about it a little bit, you sort of can come. They can sort of come to the conclusion sometimes that it may not be as big a deal as they thought. And again, how can you turn it into a little deal? What are the ways to do that?
Maybe I think in a way, validating their feelings that it's a big deal helps them feel like that maybe they can go to that point where maybe they could make it a little deal. Because you have validated that they feel, yeah, this is a big deal. So if I don't validate that first, there's no way it's going to be ever a little deal. So that gives them.
That's a really good point, yeah. I'm just thinking about tears this morning, and I think just by saying that, I understand it, that was enough, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son would not wear anything that has buttons.
Buttons?
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
Guess what happens when you stuff
I don't really force it,
happens when you stuff
but whenever he has to wear, like during his first communion, he has to wear a shirt and a tie. I tell him, well, this is a big deal, so we have to dress up. And he understands.
Yeah.
But I just can't make him wear nice, on an ordinary day.
And maybe that's a choice, no choice thing too, right? I mean, really, you have to dress up nice for this. It's just we'll try to reduce the number of buttons in the room as possible. But yeah, this is the choice, no choices, which we talked about too.
It's what it takes to get rid of.
Yeah, brushing teeth, that's no choice. So there are rules that you could tell them.
Mm-hmm.
He has a really very firm. no discussion.
But maybe the choices are that if the brushing teeth, you can have a certain toothbrush, or you can have, a certain toothpaste. I don't know, but I'm just thinking that there's some choices you can put around the no choice, to make it more palatable in some ways.
Oh, we have Star Wars.
There you go. Right.
Superhero toothbrushes.
It's funny, I once worked with a person who was developing a toothbrush which would print out a little star. They may even have them. That may even happen, but every time they brush their teeth and things like that. So.
What's left of
It's been
my
really helpful. I've started sharing more about kind of my struggles with some of these too, just to kind of give them a nutshell. And with the choice, no choice, like with the homework, just getting through the homework. Like Brian, I know you don't want to do the homework. Sometimes there are things that, but going to school is your job.
I live out by the cave.
There are lots of things that I don't want to do for my job, but I have to. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. Sometimes you're going to do things that you really love to do, but you just kind of have to get it done. Now, whether you do your homework, I think we might have discussed this in this forum last time, in the room or at the desk, we let you
Oh, yeah,
get
right.
it done.
No, but that's great. I think the more you sort of bring your own experience into it, we talked about all the way through, the better. I think it really has an impact. So in fact, I use these sort of choice, no choice. I really need to come here today, and that's just sort of no choice. But we're going to see each other later, and we're going to do other things as well. But I think actually one of the no choices coming up here, because I think we have to be out of here at 3:00. But I think making it positive and fun is always, the more you can do that, the better.
We're looking at our ears, hold to that vocabulary. We hear him,
Yeah.
we pick it out.
Yeah, great, that's great. Keeping it positive.
Because we know he's hearing that from one source, so we want to make sure.
Well, hopefully it's 3, but it's probably mainly 2, right? I mean, I'm just thinking there's supposed to be a little bit of work going on actually in the classroom. I don't know if that's actually happening. But
Ours is a pullout.
No, that's what I mean. But the teachers are supposed to be sort of.
I think they got a little.
They got a little, not a lot. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff
Yeah.
is stuff they were already doing anyway.
Yeah.
Now they just have words for it.
That's true.
Right. Anyway, so thank you for coming today. It's been what a great conversation. I mean, as I say, you learn so much from listening to people. It's great that you brought up all the examples and that we could sort of talk about them. I really appreciate that. If you might get a call in a couple of weeks from somebody just sort of seeing if there's anything that you wanted to further follow up on, or and then I think is there another one scheduled? I think is it in
they're
May or
bunch.
something?
I don't remember getting any.
Yeah, but it's in a different place.
In May?
Yeah,
or
the
something?
other ones,
I think so.
It's not here though. It's in a
there's
different-
2 in May, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it, because we have 2 more to go.
They're
so.
closer to us, I think, next time. There was one on May the 9th and then one May the 30th.
Okay.
May the 9th
Is it Pimmit Hills Center?
Okay.
It's in Falls Church. I don't know where that is, but,
I know where it is. It's on the other side of Wall Street.
oh, okay.
Falls Church is really strange, because some of it's in Fairfax, right?
We're in Fairfax
This
Falls
is-
Church, yes.
This is Fairfax Falls Church, but on the other side of Falls Church City from where we are.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
May 9th at what time?
1:30 again. And then I think probably the 30th is the same thing. 1:30th is also at Pimmit Hills, also at 1:30.
Yeah, the 30th, I'm probably not going to be able to make it.
And then they had like a makeup one scheduled. I didn't put that in my calendar.
I don't think I got that email.
Julian? Sorry, we're just thinking about they have scheduled the 9th and the 30th, but is there a makeup, something for that makeup?